Good morning, students. Today we are going to do the first chapter from your Flamingo book. The name of this chapter is The Last Lesson. In the year 1870, there was a war between France and Prussia, in which France was defeated. As a result, French was banned in the two districts of Alsace and Lorraine, and the German would be taught in the schools from next day. The story, The Last Lesson, beautifully describes the last day of a French teacher, M. Hamel, in his school and the drastic change in the views of his students. The story is narrated by a little student named Franz. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of a scolding, especially because M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright, the birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. Now, Franz started for school very late that morning, and he was afraid that he would get a scolding from his teacher because a day before his teacher had announced that he would question them on the rules governing the participles, and he had not prepared even a single word about them. Secondly, he was late for school, so he was afraid of getting a scolding from his teacher. For a moment, he thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. So he thought that he should stay out of, school that day. Why? Because the day was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and he wanted to see the Prussian soldiers who were drilling and enjoy all this. Anyhow, he came over his temptation and hurried off to school. When I passed the town hall, there was crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officers. And I thought to myself, without stopping, what can be the matter now? When he passed the town hall, he saw that there was a crowd. So many people were standing in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, he knew that all the bad news had come from there. On the board, it was written the news about the lost battles, the draft, the order of the commanding officers. So now today when he saw the crowd in front of the bulletin board, he thought, what could be the matter now? Then, as I hurried by as fast as I could go, the blacksmith washer, who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin, called after me, "Don't go so fast, but you will get to your school in plenty of time." I thought he was making fun of me and reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. So then, as he was going from that place, blacksmith washer, whose name was Washer, he was standing there with his apprentice, and he was reading the bulletin, called Franz and asked him, "Don't go so fast, but you will get to your school in plenty of time. You have plenty of time to reach your school." Franz thought that the blacksmith was making fun of him, Anyhow, he did not stop there and reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath, that he ran fast from there and reached the school. Usually when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. The opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the great teachers, great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places and M. Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. Now here Franz describes that the usual scenario when he used to go to school was that there was a great hustle bustle, that the noise of the opening and closing of desks, that the lessons repeated in unison, they all could be heard out in the street. But today it was altogether different. Why? Everything was still. It was looking as Sunday morning. Why as quiet as Sunday morning? Because on Sunday there is no school. So there is no, noise of anything. So that day also it was as quiet as Sunday morning. And through the window he saw all his classmates were already on their seats. And M. Hamel, his teacher, was walking up and down with the terrible iron ruler under his arm. This iron ruler, that is the symbol that shows that M. Hamel was a strict teacher. Now, he had to go inside in the class in front of everybody. And he was blushing, and he was also frightened of entering the class late. But nothing happened. M. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." So Franz was very much afraid that he would get a scolding from his teacher. But today his teacher did not scold him. He was so kind to him and he said, "Come on, little Franz, we were beginning without you." I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap all embroidered that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. Now, when he entered the class and when he sat there comfortably, after that, he noted that his teacher was wearing a new, a dress, a green coat, frilled shirt, and black silk cap, all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. So this was a dress which he used to wear on special moments, like, inspection on prize days. And today he was wearing that. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn, but the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hosser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others besides. Everybody looked sad, and Hosser had brought an old primer, thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. So, what he saw? He saw his teacher wearing a special dress. And secondly, he saw that the scene was, quiet there on that day. And the thing that surprised him was the last back benches in the class which were usually empty, they were occupied today by the village people. The old hostler, who was wearing a three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several other elderly villagers, they were occupying that seat. Everybody looked sad, and Hosser had brought an old primer. A primer is a book, for little kids, for learning the alphabets and all that. So he was going through with the specs, and he was going through the primer. While I was wondering about it all, M. Hamel mounted his chair and, in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." So, when he was wondering about all these things, the things that his teacher was wearing a special dress, that the back benches were occupied by the village people, that, all those people were looking so sad. Similarly, at the same time, M. Hamel sat on his chair and he announced, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you." So he told the students that it was the last lesson that he was going to give to them. Why? Because an order had come from Berlin to teach only German in the school of Alsace and Lorraine. The French was banned. And from the next day, the new teacher would come and then they have to learn German from the next day. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive. So he wanted everyone to be very attentive in the class. What a thunderclap these words were to me. This is a very important, what a thunderclap these words were to me. So they can ask in the board, what shocked him most? These words. Which words? That today, this is your last French lesson, and he wanted everyone to be very attentive. So these words really shocked Franz. Oh, the wretches! That was what they had put up on the town hall. Now he just reminds the crowd in front of the bulletin board that this, order from Berlin must be there on that, board, and everybody must be standing there reading that, order from the Berlin.